Chapter 3401. Shuichu's body was enveloped in a layer of blue light. It flowed like water in the deep sea, making splashing sounds. His entire body twisted as if he had turned into water. He wanted to fight with Lu Ming. The winner would control Breeze Mountain, while the loser would leave or surrender. Splash! Suddenly, Shuichu moved. His body turned into a river and rushed toward Lu Ming. At the same time, the river water surged. Battle swords formed by water flew out and attacked Lu Ming. Thousand rapid whirlpool. A low roar could be heard from the river. Then, more than 10 huge vortexes appeared above Lu Ming's head. They were formed by blue and crystal-clear water. They spun crazily, as if they wanted to engulf everything and crush them into ashes. This was Shuichu's origin secret technique. Lu Ming gave him a sense of danger, so he did not dare to be careless. He used his full strength right from the start. Come on! Lu Ming's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He circulated his divine power, and his aura burst out. He used the battle formula to quadruple his battle strength. At the same time, he waved his hand and several origin secret techniques appeared. He attacked Shuichu. To be honest, Shuichu's strength was not weaker than Tianxing's. Otherwise, they would not have fought for so many years without a winner. But against Lu Ming, the result was already decided. Lu Ming controlled a few origin secret skills and constantly suppressed Shuichu. Shuichu was unable to contend with it. After barely withstanding more than 10 moves, he was sent flying. He vomited blood and was seriously injured. I've lost. I'm willing to leave Breeze Mountain. Shuichu sighed. Leave? Did I say you could leave? Lu Ming said indifferently. What do you mean? You said before that if we lost, we could leave. Are you going back on your words? Shuichu's expression changed. That's right. I've changed my mind. Lu Ming sneered. A headband appeared in his hand as he walked toward Shuichu. He wanted to control Shuichu. He could condense origin divine crystals for him. He did not want to miss this opportunity. You, despicable! Shuichu roared and transformed into a stream of water, wanting to escape. Since he had been defeated, he accepted it. He planned to leave Little Wind Mountain and head to other famous mountains. With his strength, it was still possible for him to enter those famed mountains and join a faction. In those famed mountains, it was rumored that the exploitation was even more severe. To condense 10 primordial divine crystals, one had to hand over at least 9, or even more. However, the speed of condensing on the famed mountains was much faster. In some small mountains, it would take 10 years to condense one piece, and 100 years to condense 10 pieces. If Shuichu stayed with Lu Ming, even if he handed in 6 pieces out of every 10 pieces, he would only get 4 pieces in 100 years. However, in the famed mountains, one would be able to condense 1 piece a month, 12 pieces a year, and 100 years, more than 1,000 pieces. Even if one were to hand it in, at the very least, there would still be dozens of pieces left. This was something that Windy Mountain couldn't compare with. After being defeated by Lu Ming, Shuichu had originally planned to leave and head to those famous mountains. However, he didn't expect that Lu Ming didn't want him to leave at all. Gate of Domination. Lu Ming waved his hand and the Gate of Domination pressed down on Shuichu. Shuichu was already heavily injured and couldn't withstand Lu Ming's attack at all. He was suppressed under the Gate of Domination and couldn't move. Then, Lu Ming stepped forward and put the headband on Shuichu's head. You sigh. In the end, Shuichu sighed helplessly and gave up resisting. Now that he was a fish on the chopping board, he would only die if he resisted. What about you guys? Lu Ming's gaze was like lightning as he looked at the remaining members of the Flying Alliance. We are willing to surrender. When the remaining members of the Flying Alliance saw that Shuichu had been defeated, they didn't dare to resist and surrendered obediently. All right, then from now on, we are the only one left in Little Wind Mountain. We need to change our name. Let's call ourselves the Dragon Alliance. Don't worry, I won't let you guys suffer losses if you follow me. Tianxing, Shuichu, in the future, when you condense primordial divine crystals, you can keep 7 out of every 10 pieces and only hand in 3 pieces. Lu Ming said loudly, using the name of the Dragon Alliance that he had created previously. Thank you, Alliance Leader. Tianxing and Shuai-Chu bowed with a hint of joy. They only had to hand in 3 out of every 10 pieces. Although it wasn't as good as being the alliance leader in the past, it had already exceeded their expectations. It was better than what they had imagined. As for the rest of you, as long as you hand in 5 out of every 10 pieces, you can keep 5 for yourselves, Lu Ming said to the others. Thank you, alliance leader. The others were overjoyed. In the past, they had to hand in 7 or 6 pieces every 100 years. But now, they only had to hand in 5 pieces, and that was already a huge profit. They suddenly felt that there was nothing wrong with changing the alliance leader. It was even better than before. Do you guys have any primordial divine crystals? Give me a few pieces first. Lu Ming swept his gaze around, looking forward to it. Previously, when they directly absorbed the primordial divine qi to cultivate, the effect was much better than outside. What would the effect be if they directly refined the primordial divine crystals? Lu Ming was looking forward to it. This alliance leader, it's hard to find any primordial divine crystals left. Normally, when we get them, we will directly refine them and convert them into our strength. So, there are none left. Shuai-Chu said awkwardly. Alliance leader, I have 2 pieces here. At this moment, Tianxing spoke. All right, give them to me first. I'll deduct them from what you have to hand in the future. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Then, Tianxing took out 2 pieces of dark red crystals and handed them to Lu Ming. The crystals were about the size of a longan. When Lu Ming took them, he felt an extremely powerful and pure energy drilling into his palm. Is this the primordial divine crystal? I feel like the energy has mutated. Lu Ming sensed it, and his heart skipped a beat. He felt that the energy of the primordial divine crystal was indeed condensed from the primordial divine qi. But because the concentration was too high, it had mutated and become of a higher level. It was definitely more useful than the primordial divine qi. All right, you guys can go do whatever you need to do, Lu Ming said with a wave of his hand. Yes. Tianxing, Shuai-Chu, and the others cupped their fists and left in a flash. They went to various places in Breeze Mountain and started to condense the primordial divine crystal. Lu Ming found a quiet place and sat down cross-legged. He took out a piece of the primordial divine crystal and swallowed it. He then started to refine it. Thump, thump, thump. The ancient god's heart beat even faster, like thunder. It absorbed the energy of the primordial divine crystal and turned it into a powerful blood qi that flowed into his limbs and bones. This blood qi was too powerful. It was much stronger than when he had absorbed the primordial divine qi. Lu Ming's body could not absorb it all at once. Lu Ming then used the Universe Myriad Dao technique to absorb the energy. He did not expect that the energy would turn into various kinds of divine powers and be absorbed by the star core. The energy of the primordial divine crystal could not only increase the strength of the primordial divine body, but it could also be used to increase divine powers. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The energy of the primordial divine crystal was very rich. Lu Ming used half a month's time to fully absorb the energy of the primordial divine crystal. Chapter 3402. It took Lu Ming half a month to fully absorb a piece of primordial divine crystal. However, the effect was shocking. It was better than absorbing the primordial divine qi alone for a few years. Lu Ming felt that his ancient god body had improved a lot and was closer to the purple-armored ancient god body. If this continued, Lu Ming believed that it wouldn't be long before his ancient god body improved and became a purple-armored ancient god body. At the same time, his divine power had increased a little. Although it wasn't much and was mainly divided among the 11 divine powers, it was still much faster than normal cultivation. The effect of the primordial divine crystal is indeed extraordinary. If I have hundreds or thousands of them and continuously refine them, my ancient god body and cultivation will definitely improve. No wonder the people here have such amazing primordial divine bodies. Lu Ming pondered. He had fought with Lu Kun, Tianxing, Shuai-Chu, and the others before and realized that their primordial divine bodies were extremely powerful. It was especially so for Tianxing and Shuai-Chu. Although they didn't cultivate the ancient god body but other primordial divine bodies, they were very close to the blue-armored ancient god body. At least, They were at the limit of the blue-armored ancient god body. In the Taishu dynasty, there were people who cultivated the ancient god body, but Lu Ming had never seen anyone who could cultivate to this level. Lu Ming's cultivation level was inseparable from his series of fortuitous encounters. Lu Ming had a series of fortuitous encounters before he managed to cultivate to this realm. However, the geniuses that Lu Ming encountered here were all very experienced and were not much weaker than him. It must be because of the primordial divine crystals here. For example, Shui Chu and Tian Xing used to enjoy the fruits of others' labor. After years of constantly refining primordial divine crystals, their primordial divine bodies were not strong. This was only Breeze Mountain, a small mountain. Those famous mountains could condense a piece of primordial divine crystal in a month. How far could those geniuses who stayed in the famous mountains cultivate their primordial divine bodies? Continue. Then, Lu Ming swallowed the remaining primordial divine crystal and refined it. Half a month later, he had completely refined it. However, the ancient god body did not break through. According to the ancient god tactics, the ancient god body was divided into 7 levels: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. The purple-armored ancient god body was the last level and was extremely difficult to break through. Generally speaking, if one did not have the opportunity, it would be difficult to break through in one's lifetime. Naturally, it was not something that could be broken through by relying on 2 primordial divine crystals. It was not that easy. Of course, the harder it was to break through, the greater the rewards would be. The others would need 10 years to condense the primordial divine crystal. I'd better cultivate while waiting. Lu Ming pondered, and then went into seclusion to cultivate, absorbing the primordial divine qi between heaven and earth. Every time he cultivated for a period of time, he would take out a voice transmission jade charm to send a voice transmission to Blue Merchant and Myriad God. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. Just like that, time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it had been 100 years since Lu Ming had arrived at Windy Mountain. 100 years was just a blink of an eye to them. After 100 years, Lu Ming's subordinates began to hand over primordial divine crystals. Lu Ming's 70 subordinates received more than 350 primordial divine crystals. Receiving so many primordial divine crystals almost made Lu Ming drool. With so many primordial divine crystals, I'll definitely be able to reach the purple-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. After 100 years of cultivation, Lu Ming felt that the ancient god body was only half a step away from the purple-armored ancient god body. Just a little bit more, and he would be able to make the breakthrough. However, it was this little bit that had kept Lu Ming stuck, unable to break through. Now that he had so many primordial divine crystals, he would definitely be able to break through in one go. Lu Ming was about to take out a primordial divine crystal to absorb and refine when a figure suddenly rushed over and shouted, "Alliance leader, bad news. Bad news." "Lu Kun, what's going on?" Lu Ming frowned. The person who had come was Lu Kun. "Alliance leader, someone is here to cause trouble. They have already injured many of our people." Lu Kun said. "Cause trouble? They're courting death." Lu Ming snorted coldly. "Alliance leader, but the other party is from a famed mountain." Lu Kun said, his face pale. "Famed mountain? Very well, let's go and meet them." With that, Lu Ming strode out of the room. Lu Kun quickly followed. On the way, Lu Kun briefly explained the situation. The other party was from one of the famed mountains, Fengyun Mountain. They were from one of the factions in Fengyun Mountain, Yuntian Alliance. Previously, they had suddenly descended on Breeze Mountain and demanded that they hand over all their primordial divine crystals, or they would flatten Breeze Mountain. After that, a conflict broke out between the two parties. However, the other party was very powerful. Tian Xing and Shui Chu were defeated and injured by the other party. After a while, Lu Ming and Lu Kun arrived at the peak of Breeze Mountain. At the center of the peak, 2 young men in white robes stood there with their hands behind their backs. They looked like they were the most powerful people in the world. "Alliance leader." Seeing Lu Ming's arrival, the others' eyes lit up. Tian Xing, Shui Chu, and the others hurried over. Lu Ming glanced around and found that Tian Xing and Shui Chu's aura was weak. They were obviously injured. "Are you okay?" Lu Ming asked. "We're fine. Alliance leader, you have to be careful of those two. Although they are only in the 7th layer of the Divine King realm, their primordial divine bodies are very strong," Tian Xing said softly. Lu Ming nodded and looked at the two young men. The two young men in white robes also looked at Lu Ming. One of them said, "You are the leader of this mountain. Very well. Hand over all your primordial divine crystals." "Why should we hand over our primordial divine crystals to you?" Lu Ming smiled faintly. "Very simple. From today onwards, this mountain will be under the jurisdiction of Yuntian Alliance." The young man in white robes smiled. "Nonsense. Fengyan Mountain is very far away from here. Moreover, the factions of the famed mountains usually don't interfere in the affairs of other mountains. I think you just happened to pass by here and wanted to plunder some primordial divine crystals along the way." Tian Xing shouted angrily. He had been here for quite some time, so he knew a little about some of the things that had happened. Sometimes, the geniuses of the famed mountains would go out for errands. Some of them with bad character would set their sights on the small mountains and plunder some primordial divine crystals from them. Although there were not many primordial divine crystals on the small mountains, there were many of them. The result of plundering them along the way was shocking. Obviously, the two young men in white robes were like that. "So what? If you don't hand them over, we don't mind destroying you. Even if all the ants on this small mountain were to disappear, it wouldn't cause any trouble." The young man in white robes who had spoken previously said coldly, "Is that so? I would like to see how capable you are to destroy my windy mountain." Lu Ming's face was cold. He stepped forward and cold killing intent filled the air. 5th layer of the Divine King realm. "Hee, I really don't know how you became the leader of this small mountain with your cultivation." The young man in white robes sneered. Chapter 3403. The young man in white clothes sneered and walked towards Lu Ming. His aura soared to the sky. He had the cultivation base of the 7th King God layer. His immense god power turned into a giant palm, pressing down on Lu Ming. He wanted to suppress Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming threw a punch. A 9-clawed dragon roared and soared to the sky, tearing the palm apart. "Little brat, get down. Godly sky fist." The young man in white clothes shouted and soared to the sky. Then, he threw a punch. Both of his fists glowed. Instantly, countless fist energies flew towards Lu Ming. Each of his fist energies was terrifying. They kept exploding the void. "Godly dragon Dharma," Lu Ming shouted, activating the battle character secret art to increase his fighting strength by 4 times. The god power in his body surged to his hands like a river. As Lu Ming moved his hands, the 9-clawed dragon appeared one after another. There were 99 of them in total. The 99 9-clawed dragons roared and dashed towards the young man in white clothes, colliding with his fist energies. Boom, boom. Explosions kept happening in the sky. Violent energies swept everywhere. After a few breaths, the fist energies and the 9-clawed dragon disappeared. "You're strong. No wonder you're so arrogant. However, you're not strong enough in front of me." The young man in white clothes shouted. His eyes were even colder. He couldn't even defeat a cultivator of the 5th King God layer. He felt humiliated. His murderous intent surged. Lu Ming was speechless. Who was the arrogant one here? They had come to the Windy Mountain to rob them of their original divine crystals. Now, Lu Ming was the arrogant one. Did he think that it was normal for him to be arrogant? Did he think that it was normal for him to be arrogant? Lu Ming didn't want to waste his breath on this kind of person. Die. At that moment, the young man in white clothes shouted. A bronze fist appeared above his head. Yes, it was a fist that seemed to be made of bronze. It was incomparably huge, like a small mountain, and emitted a terrifying pressure. Boom. His fist shook and pressed down on Lu Ming. A berserk energy exploded out, causing some of the weaker Dragon Alliance members to be unable to stand still. They retreated to avoid this energy. This was his origin secret technique. Tyrant God Spear. Lu Ming clenched his fist and the Tyrant God Spear condensed. Then, a spear light soared into the sky and blasted towards the bronze fist. The two collided. An even more terrifying explosion rang out as the tyrant god's spear and the bronze fist shook violently. Then, the bronze fist flew backward and the tyrant god's spear shrunk rapidly. Damned bastard! Die for me! The white-robed young man became even more furious when he failed to defeat Lu Ming even after using his origin secret technique. He roared furiously as his body rapidly expanded, turning into a giant. This is the ancient god body. Lu Ming was stunned. He didn't expect the white-robed young man to cultivate the ancient god body, just like Lu Ming. However, the white-robed young man's ancient god body was too big. It was 10,000 meters tall and emitted a purple light. Purple-armored ancient god body. The white-robed young man's ancient god body had reached the purple-armored ancient god body, which was one level higher than Lu Ming's. As expected of a genius from a famous mountain, he has so many resources, Lu Ming exclaimed. The white-robed young man's ancient god body was one level higher than his. The resources of a famous mountain made Lu Ming envious. Bam! The purple-armored ancient god stepped forward and stomped on Lu Ming. At the same time, the bronze fist glowed and flew towards the white-robed young man, merging with his fist. Whoosh! Lu Ming used the Nine Heavens Garuda technique and retreated quickly to avoid his opponent's kick. Then, his body expanded rapidly and transformed into the blue-armored ancient god body. However, the blue-armored ancient god body was only 1,000 meters tall, which was far inferior to the white-robed young man. He looked like a small dot in front of the white-robed young man. So, you also have the ancient god body, but only the blue-armored ancient god body. Die! The white-robed young man's disdainful voice rang out. Then, the bronze fist blasted toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming quickly used the overbearing god's spear to block in front of him. Boom! The white-robed young man's fist hit the overbearing god's spear, causing it to vibrate violently. Several cracks appeared on the spear, and it almost exploded. Lu Ming's body went numb as he felt a terrifying force crushing toward him. He couldn't help but retreat and crash into a protruding mountain rock, shattering it. What a terrifying force! Is this the power of the purple-armored ancient god? Lu Ming spat out a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. After the white-robed young man displayed his ancient god body, his strength had increased tremendously. His combat strength was much stronger than before. Even though Lu Ming had displayed his ancient god body, he was still no match for the white-robed young man. Lu Ming's previous guess was right. The purple-armored ancient god was much stronger than the blue-armored ancient god. The harder it was to break through, the greater the gains after breaking through. It was no wonder that Tianxing and Shui Chu were no match for the white-robed young man. Although they were of the same cultivation level, after the white-robed young man displayed his purple-armored ancient god body, Tianxing and Shui Chu were no match for him. Ha ha ha, boy. So what if you have some strength? In front of me, you are just an ant. Die. The white-robed young man laughed and took a few steps forward. Then, he threw another punch at Lu Ming. Let's see how strong the purple-armored ancient god is. Lu Ming wasn't afraid. Instead, he was excited and his fighting spirit soared. Then, with a loud shout, Lu Ming circulated all his divine power to the extreme. Above his head, a moon and a sun appeared. Then, the gate of domination, the void-shattering sword, and the primordial divine dragon horn appeared one after another. 6 secret skills of origin. How is that possible? The white-robed young man roared in disbelief. Nothing is impossible. Let's fight. Lu Ming shouted and pressed his hands together. All kinds of secret skills of origin exploded with terrifying power and bombarded the white-robed young man from all directions. So what if you have many secret skills of origin? I will still kill you. The white-robed young man came to his senses and roared. He waved his fist and punched at Lu Ming. In the next moment, he collided with Lu Ming's various secret skills of origin. There was a huge explosion at the peak of Breezy Mountain. The destructive power cut off a large piece of the mountain peak. The two of them fought with all their might, and terrifying waves of energy erupted. Around the mountain peak, except for the other white-robed young man, Tianxing and Shui Chu, the others couldn't stand still. They retreated and watched from afar. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had collided dozens of times, but there was no clear winner. It had to be said that the white-robed young man was very strong, especially when combined with the purple-armored ancient god body. His power was too strong. He was actually able to fight Lu Ming to a standstill. The purple-armored ancient god body is indeed powerful. Lu Ming wasn't afraid. Instead, he was happy. He was about to break through to the purple-armored ancient god body. Once he broke through, his combat strength would undoubtedly skyrocket. He was looking forward to it. Damn it, damn it. The white-robed young man roared in his heart. He couldn't believe it. With his strength, he couldn't defeat Lu Ming even though he was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming. Such a freak didn't exist even on the famous Fengyan Mountain, which was full of geniuses. Which force in the primitive universe did he come from? Chapter 3404. The white-robed young man and Lu Ming fought for a few more rounds, but there was still no clear winner. Is this your maximum strength? I have seen the power of the purple-armored ancient god body. Let's end this battle. Lu Ming's indifferent voice could be heard. Then, a powerful aura erupted. Battle character secret art. 5 times combat strength. Now, when Lu Ming triggered the battle character secret art to increase his combat strength by 5 times, the success rate was less than 10%. After triggering the 5-fold increase in combat ability, Lu Ming's ability increased by another notch. Boom! The overbearing god spear collided with the opponent's fist again. This time, the opponent's body shook violently. His 10,000-meter-tall body was pushed back, causing the entire Breeze Mountain to shake. How is this possible? The white-robed young man shouted in disbelief. Lu Ming had not used his full strength just now. Now, his combat strength had surpassed the white-robed young man's. He was still in the 5th tier of the Divine King realm, but his combat strength had surpassed the white-robed young man's. I said, "Nothing is impossible," Lu Ming said indifferently as he attacked the white-robed young man fiercely. The 6 secret arts of origin, under the support of the endless divine power, were maintained at their peak power. Every move could destroy a planet. The white-robed young man was no match for Jin Wushuang. He could only defend himself and could not fight back. Bam! He was careless and the overbearing god's spear hit his shoulder. Instantly, purple scales flew out and blood splattered. A large part of his shoulder exploded. Quick, come and help me. Let's kill this man together. Finally, the white-robed young man panicked and shouted at the other young man. Kill! The other young man was very decisive. He attacked Lu Ming directly. You want to win by numbers? Have you asked for our permission? Attack! Tianxing and Shui Chu shouted and rushed toward the second white-robed young man. Get lost! The second white-robed young man shouted coldly. He exploded with all his strength and turned into a wild beast. This was also a primitive divine body. It looked like a wild beast, but its combat strength was extremely strong. When he used this primitive divine body, he reached a height of 10,000 meters. Apparently, he was no weaker than the purple-armored young man. Tianxing and Shui Chu did not dare to be careless. They also exploded with all their strength. Boom! Boom! After a few blows, Tianxing and Shui Chu were no match for the opponent, and they kept retreating. Although the opponent was also in the 7th tier of Divine King Realm, his combat strength was no weaker than the first white-robed young man. Even if Tianxing and Shui Chu joined forces, they could not fight him. We just have to hold him back. When the Alliance Master wins, he will naturally come back to help us. Tianxing said Shui Chu okay. Shui Chu responded. Immediately, the two of them changed their tactics. They did not seek to make any achievements, but to avoid making any mistakes. They only used defensive moves to entangle the other party, so that the other party could not deal with Lu Ming for the time being. At this moment, Lu Ming had gained an overall advantage. He blasted the first young man in white robes until he kept retreating. In good the great In Yan Go. Lu Ming activated his Yin Yang God Eyes with all his might, transforming them into Yin Yang runes that appeared around the other party's body. They wrapped around the other party, trying to lock him in place. Roar! The opponent roared and attacked with all his strength. He wanted to break the yin-yang talisman, but Lu Ming controlled the 6 origin secret skills and attacked. Bam! The gate of domination landed on the opponent's head. He staggered and almost fell. His head almost exploded. Then, the other origin secret skills landed one after another. The opponent screamed in pain. His body was injured and bleeding. At the same time, the yin-yang talisman wrapped around his body. When Lu Ming activated the yin-yang talisman, its power was shocking. Even the purple-armored ancient divine body's purple-armored scales could not withstand it. The talisman cut him into several pieces. The first white-robed young man kept struggling, but it was useless. Lu Ming continued to attack him. Puff, puff. Finally, the opponent could not withstand it anymore. His body was cut into several pieces, but he was not dead. His eyes were filled with fear. Stop. Let me go and I will let bygones be bygones. The first white-robed young man shouted, Let bygones be bygones? Haha. Lu Ming sneered and did not stop attacking. How dare you? I am from Fengyan Mountain's Yuntian Alliance. If you dare to kill me, you will all die. The white-robed young man shouted. He used Yuntian Alliance to threaten Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming did not bother to talk nonsense with him and continued to attack. Bam! In the last attack, the gate of domination hit the opponent's head. The opponent screamed in agony. His head exploded and he died. How dare you kill someone from Yuntian Alliance? You are courting death. The second white-robed young man roared in anger. He attacked with all his strength and forced Tianxing and Shui Chu to retreat. He was about to escape. With this person's strength, Tianxing and Shui Chu would not be able to stop him. However, since Lu Ming had killed one, how could he let the second one go? If the other party really left, he would face real revenge. Since you are here, stay. Lu Ming used the Nine Heavens Kuan Peng technique and chased after the other party. Then, he stabbed with his spear. Lu Ming borrowed Qiuqiu's power for this shot. Lu Ming could not let the other party escape. Therefore, he did not fight with his own strength. It would be bad if the other party escaped. Sizzle, sizzle. Streaks of lightning shot out from the tip of the spear. In an instant, it crossed the void and attacked the second white-robed young man. It was extremely fast. The white-robed young man could not dodge in time. He was hit by the lightning and screamed in agony. Green smoke rose from his body and he almost turned into charcoal. His body fell to the ground with a plop. Lu Ming took a step forward and moved with his spear. He pierced through the other party's forehead and killed him. In this way, 2 geniuses from Fengyan Mountain's Yuntian Alliance were dead. They are dead. When the other members of the Dragon Alliance saw this, their faces changed. Some were shocked and some were solemn. Lu Ming turned into his original form. With a wave of his hand, he kept the storage rings of the 2. These 2 came from famous mountains. Are there any primordial divine crystals left? Lu Ming looked expectant. Then, he used his spiritual consciousness to scan the 2 storage rings. Lu Ming skipped over the divine weapons and elixirs. In the next moment, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He found a luxurious box in each of their storage rings. The box was filled with primordial divine crystals. In each box, there were more than 1,000 pieces. The 2 boxes together had more than 2,000 pieces. Obviously, the 2 white-robed young men had visited other mountains before coming to Breeze Mountain. They had plundered a large amount of primordial divine crystals and did not have the time to enjoy them. All of them were given to Lu Ming. The 2 of you are not bad. These 100 primordial divine crystals are for you. Chapter 3405. If you want a horse to work, you have to let the horse eat grass. Lu Ming understood this principle too well. Hence, he gave out 200 primordial divine crystals to Tianxing and Shui Chu. Tianxing and Shui Chu were overjoyed. They bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you, Alliance Leader." The others were envious. Then, Lu Ming looked around and said, "You guys are not bad either. Each of you will be rewarded with 10 primordial divine crystals." With that, he waved his hand and pieces of primordial divine crystals flew out. Each of them got 10 pieces and flew to different people. There were 68 people in the Dragon Alliance. Apart from Tianxing and Shui Chu, there were 66 people left. Each of them got 10 primordial divine crystals, which was 660 pieces. In addition to Tianxing and Shui Chu's 200 pieces, it was 860 pieces. However, Lu Ming did not feel any heartache. There were more than 200 primordial divine crystals in the storage rings of the two black-robed men. Moreover, these primordial divine crystals would not be given away for free. As expected, everyone in the Dragon Alliance was overjoyed. They thanked Lu Ming and were even more convinced by Lu Ming. To them, 10 primordial divine crystals would take them a few hundred years to get. Now that they got it all at once, they were naturally overjoyed. All right, during this period, you guys don't have to condense primordial divine crystals. Refine the primordial divine crystals in your hands first. Also, don't leak a word about what happened today. Lu Ming instructed. Yes, Alliance leader, don't worry. The others replied loudly. They naturally would not leak the news. They knew better than Lu Ming how frightening the geniuses of the famed mountains were. After giving the instructions, Lu Ming destroyed the corpses of the two white-robed men. Then, he returned to his place of seclusion and started his seclusion. With so many primordial divine crystals, it should be enough for me to break through to the purple-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming muttered. He was filled with anticipation at the thought of the purple-armored ancient god body's power. He then took out a piece of primordial divine crystal and started to refine it. In half a month, he could refine one piece. In 1 year, he could refine 24 pieces. Lu Ming had plenty of primordial divine crystals. He could refine them to his heart's content. Once he started cultivating, it took 5 years. Lu Ming refined a total of 120 pieces of primordial divine crystals. At this time, Lu Ming's accumulation finally reached the limit. Crackle! The bones in his body emitted a thunderous sound. Then, his body began to swell and emit a resplendent light. Roar! Lu Ming raised his head and let out a long howl. It was as if an ancient god had come back to life. The roar spread to every corner of Breeze Mountain. What happened? This is? Many people from the Dragon Alliance were shocked. It's the Alliance Master's original body that's breaking through. Don't go over and alarm the Alliance Master. We'll protect the Alliance Master from the surroundings. Tianxing's voice rang out, and the Dragon League calmed down and guarded the area. At this moment, Lu Ming's body had transformed into a blue-armored ancient god that was 1,000 meters tall. His whole body was emitting a dazzling blue light. Roar! Roar! Lu Ming raised his head and roared. The roar of the ancient god became more and more intense. At the same time, the sound coming from his body became louder and louder. After a few minutes, his body began to swell again. It rapidly grew bigger and taller. 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters. This time, Lu Ming's body grew to a height of 10,000 meters before stopping. At the same time, the scales on his body were no longer blue. They were purple, but light purple. Success! Haha! I've finally broken through to the purple-armored ancient god. Lu Ming laughed. He was laughing wildly in his heart. After refining so many primordial divine crystals, his ancient god body had finally broken through and reached the highest level recorded in the ancient god tactics. Of course, it was only the initial stage of the purple-armored ancient god body. There was still a long way to go before it reached the peak. The white-robed young man from before was also at this level. What a powerful force! Lu Ming exclaimed as he felt the majestic force in his body. The purple-armored ancient god body was indeed much stronger than the blue-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming felt that he could blow up a planet with one punch. With my current strength, it shouldn't be difficult to kill that white-robed young man. Lu Ming smiled. Previously, he had to use the battle formula to increase his combat strength by 5 times. At the same time, he had to use all kinds of methods to kill the white-robed young man. Now, he felt that he could kill the white-robed young man without using the battle formula. Withdraw. With a thought, Lu Ming withdrew the purple-armored ancient god body and his body returned to its original state. Let's continue. Lu Ming did not stop. He took out another primordial divine crystal and began to refine it. The purple-armored ancient god body had just broken through and was still far from the peak. his strength could still increase. Now that he had so many primordial divine crystals, he naturally had to seize the time to cultivate. He took out a piece of primordial divine crystal and refined it. After a while, Lu Ming opened his eyes. He realized that his speed of refining the primordial divine crystal was several times faster than before. Could the speed of refining the primordial divine crystal be related to the grade of the primordial ancient god body? Lu Ming's heart stirred and he was overjoyed. This was great. His speed of refining the primordial divine crystal would be several times faster. Continue. Lu Ming closed his eyes and began to refine the primordial divine crystal. Thump, thump, thump. The ancient god's heart beat violently and became more powerful. It quickly absorbed the energy of the primordial divine crystal and turned it into blood qi that filled his body. Lu Ming focused on cultivating. After a while, he realized that his speed of refining the primordial divine crystal was 3 times faster than before. In the past, it took him half a month to refine one primordial divine crystal. Now, he only needed 5 days to refine one. In other words, he could refine 6 primordial divine crystals in a month and 72 primordial divine crystals in a year. Time flew by. Lu Ming refined the primordial divine crystals one after another. Lu Ming's purple-armored ancient god body was also becoming stronger. When he turned into the purple-armored ancient god body, the light purple scales on his body became deeper. At the same time, Lu Ming's cultivation base was also increasing. After a few more years, Lu Ming's cultivation base had reached the peak of the 5th king god realm. He was only 1 step away from the 6th king god realm. Then, Lu Ming started to prepare to break through to the 6th king god realm. In the blink of an eye, another few years had passed. Lu Ming had refined several hundred primordial divine crystals and reached his limit. Breakthrough. Lu Ming's heart shook. The god power in his body surged crazily. At the same time, the measure character formula also refined a part of the energy of the star nucleus. It poured into Lu Ming's body and merged with his god power to break through to the 6th king god realm. Boom! After an unknown period of time, Lu Ming's body exploded. Then, a tremendous aura shot up to the sky. He had broken through to the 6th king god realm. Lu Ming took out a large amount of primordial divine crystals and absorbed their energy to strengthen his cultivation base. After a few days, Lu Ming's aura stabilized and disappeared into his body. Swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others flew over and said, "Congratulations, Alliance Master." Chapter 3406. Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others could not calm down. In the past, Lu Ming's cultivation was already terrifying enough. He could kill the geniuses from the famed mountains. During this time, Lu Ming's ancient divine body and cultivation had broken through one after another. How powerful had he become? No need for formalities. The rest of you can go about your business. Tianxing and Shui Chu, stay. I have something to ask you. Lu Ming said. Then, the others left, leaving Tianxing and Shui Chu behind. Alliance leader, what do you want to ask us? Tianxing was the first to speak. I want to ask you about the famed mountains. Lu Ming said. Famed mountains. Tianxing and Shui Chu were shocked. They looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. Could it be that Lu Ming had started to have designs on the famed mountains? Alliance leader, are you going to the famed mountains? Tianxing asked. That's right. Lu Ming nodded and said, the resources on the famed mountains are 100 times more than Breezy Mountain. Since I'm here, wouldn't it be a pity if I didn't go there? And I'm not the only one who wants to go. I want to bring the 2 of you with me. Together? Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed again. Why? Are the famed mountains dangerous? Lu Ming asked. Yes, they are. Tianxing nodded and said with a serious face. In this world, there are geniuses from different forces and races in the primitive universe who cultivate the primitive divine body. These geniuses came here to cultivate. So, in this world, the strong preys on the weak. This is especially obvious in the famed mountains. Those who are not powerful enough can easily be killed in the famed mountains. So, Although they know that the speed of condensing primitive divine crystals on the famed mountains is 100 times faster than on the small mountains, most of the people who are not powerful enough would rather stay on the small mountains and slowly condense primitive divine crystals and cultivate than stay on the famed mountains. Oh, Lu Ming nodded and said, "Tell me more about the famed mountains." All right, Tianxing nodded. He organized his words and said, "In this world, there are a total of 13 famed mountains. They are scattered all over the place. However, these 13 famed mountains have long been occupied. However, the situation of being occupied is also different. Out of the 13 famed mountains, 11 of them are unified. Every famed mountain is occupied by a force. Every famed mountain has a mountain master who is very powerful. Those who come later can't establish themselves in those famed mountains. If you want to enter those famed mountains to condense primordial divine crystals, you can only join the force of that famed mountain. If there is a power that wants to enter a famed mountain to develop, only the remaining two have a chance. That is because those two mountains are still in a state of separation. There are many large and small powers fighting, and they have not been unified yet. Tianxing explained the general situation of the 13 famous mountains to Li Mu. What about Fengyan Mountain? That Yuntian alliance seems to be just one of the forces in Fengyan Mountain. Lu Ming said, "That's right. Fengyan Mountain is one of the two famous mountains that haven't been unified. Moreover, it's the famous mountain closest to our Windy Mountain. The Yuntian alliance is just one of the forces involved." Tianxing nodded. "I see. All right, let's go to Fengyan Mountain then." Lu Ming said, "Fengyan Mountain? Alliance leader, but..." Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed. With their strength, it was very dangerous to go to Fengyan Mountain. "Why? Don't you want to go to the famed mountains to cultivate? Do you want to stay in this small place?" Lu Ming said plainly, "Of course we want to go to the famed mountains. However, most of the people in the Dragon Alliance aren't strong enough. If we go to the famed mountains and get targeted by other forces, we might be in danger," Shui Chu said with a solemn face. "It's okay. I will protect the people of the Dragon Alliance. I won't let you get killed," Lu Ming said confidently. Now that his combat strength had skyrocketed, and at the same time, he had Qiuqiu. If he and Qiuqiu worked together, their strength would be even more shocking. He was confident that he could establish himself in the famed mountains. Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed. Then, they said, "Since the alliance leader wants to go, we will naturally accompany him. I just don't know if the others want to go." "Everyone is willing to go. Those who are willing to go with me will follow me. Those who are unwilling, I won't force them," Lu Ming said. 2 days later, Lu Ming gathered everyone in the Dragon Alliance and told them his thoughts. When everyone heard that Lu Ming wanted to go to Fengyan Mountain, their faces changed. In the end, a small half of them chose to stay in Fengyan Mountain. After all, although Fengyan Mountain was very tempting, it was too dangerous. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives. More than 40 people chose to follow Lu Ming to Fengyan Mountain. They chose to believe in Lu Ming. On the second day, Lu Ming led the 40 people of the Dragon Alliance and set off for Fengyan Mountain. Fengyan Mountain was quite far away from Fengyan Mountain. It took them half a month to reach the boundary of Fengyan Mountain. Is that one of the famed mountains, Fengyan Mountain? It is indeed magnificent. Lu Ming raised his eyes and looked into the distance. On the ground in front of him, there was a huge mountain. This mountain was huge and boundless. Fengyan Mountain could not be compared to it at all. Fengyan Mountain was already big enough. It was 100,000 feet tall. However, compared to Fengyan Mountain, it was just a small dot. It was majestic and grand. Even though they were far away, they could feel a terrifying pressure coming from it. This pressure was as if there was a real primordial divine spirit sitting in front of them. Famed mountains were the places that gave birth to primordial divine spirits. Legend had it that countless years ago, the belly of each famed mountain gave birth to a primordial divine spirit. Although countless years had passed, the famed mountains were still the sacred grounds for those who cultivated the primordial divine body. No, it should be the sacred grounds for cultivators. It was said that even if one did not cultivate the primordial divine body, they could still gain great benefits by cultivating in the famed mountains. Is this a famed mountain? The people of the Dragon Alliance mumbled with anticipation. Many people had been in this world for many years, but had never been to a famed mountain. Let's go. Lu Ming waved his hand and led the people of the Dragon Alliance towards the famed mountain. The famed mountain was vast, and no one knew how big it was. Anyway, with Lu Ming's eyesight, he could not see the end of it. The dozens of them entering the famed mountain was no different from a few ants entering a vast ocean. Not long after, they set foot at the foot of the famed mountain and entered the range of the famed mountain. What a rich primordial divine qi! The primordial divine qi here is at least 10 times that of Fengyun Mountain. It is also 10 times faster to condense primordial divine crystals here. Many people of the Dragon Alliance exclaimed. This was only the foot of Fengyun Mountain. If they were in the core area, the primordial divine qi would be 100 times denser than that of Fengyun Mountain. This is, Lu Ming sensed carefully and felt that the primordial divine qi was not as simple as it seemed. Within the range of Fengyun Mountain, he felt a strong pressure on his body. In this place, their movements and speed would become slower. Chapter 3407. In Fengyun Mountain, there was a strong pressure that could suppress one's speed and movements, making them slower than in other places. Lu Ming also felt that there was a special characteristic. Lu Ming closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then, he showed a hint of joy. He realized that under such pressure, he could actually speed up the comprehension of the divine power of origin. It was faster than in other places. As expected of the place that gave birth to the primordial gods. It's too mysterious. Lu Ming exclaimed. What kind of existence were the primordial gods? When the world was first created, a group of tyrannical existences were born naturally. They were born with endless power and could control the divine power of origin. It was a piece of cake for them to destroy planets and galaxies. Now, the cultivators constantly comprehended divine power and awakened the divine power of origin. They were only getting closer to the divine power of origin. This place had given birth to the primordial gods, so there were mysterious remnants of the divine power of origin. Of course, it would be very useful for the comprehension of the divine power of origin. Let's go into the mountain. Lu Ming waved his hand and led the people of the Dragon Alliance into Fengyun Mountain. Fengyun Mountain was very big. They didn't meet anyone along the way. Soon, they came to a valley and stopped in front of it. The environment here was very good, and the primordial divine qi was very dense. It was at least 100 times denser than that of Mount Xiaofeng. It was suitable to cultivate here. In the future, we will cultivate here. This will be the headquarters of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming said. Then, he stepped forward and slashed at a 10-meter-tall boulder with his palm like a knife. Boom! The palm slashed at the boulder. The boulder shook nonstop, but it wasn't cut apart. It only had a small hole. It's so hard. Lu Ming was shocked. Originally, he wanted to cut off a boulder and carve the words Dragon Alliance on it and erect it in front of the valley. But he didn't expect that he couldn't cut it off at all. His palm strike just now was so powerful that even a star would be destroyed. He didn't expect that he couldn't even cut a 10-meter-tall boulder here. It could only be said that the place that gave birth to the primordial gods was too extraordinary. The rocks were incomparably hard and difficult to cut. I don't believe it. Lu Ming gritted his teeth. He couldn't afford to lose face in front of his subordinates. He activated the battle character art and quadrupled his battle prowess. He circulated all 11 types of god powers in his body. At the same time, he used the heavenly demon golden body, which made his palms even harder than god tools. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Ming waved his hand and continuously chopped at the rocks. The rocks trembled and shattered. After 100 consecutive slashes, the rock was finally cut off. Then, Lu Ming continued to repair it. Half a day later, a stone tablet that was 10 meters tall and full of holes was finally formed. There were 2 large words carved on it, Dragon Alliance. Hoo. Lu Ming was so tired that he was panting and sweating profusely. Dealing with a stone tablet was even more tiring than fighting a great battle. Fortunately, it was settled. Afterwards, they entered the valley, made some arrangements, and then settled down here. Many people could not wait to condense primordial divine crystals. Sure enough, a month later, they successfully condensed a piece of primordial divine crystal, which made everyone ecstatic. One piece a month. This speed was too fast. One should know that it would take 10 years at Mount Xiaofeng. 10 years had become a month. Many people were a little confused and felt as if they were dreaming. Then, many people started to think about how many divine crystals Lu Ming would ask them to hand over. The best they had heard of in the other famous mountains was that they had to hand over 9 out of 10 divine crystals and keep one for themselves. This was already the best treatment. Some places even asked them to hand over 19 out of 20 divine crystals. Even so, it was much better than those small mountains. Countless people wanted to join. Then, how much would Lu Ming ask? No matter how much Lu Ming asked, they would accept it. After all, in Fengyan Mountain, they needed Lu Ming's protection. You guys should focus on condensing primordial divine crystals. The ratio to handover is the same as Mount Xiaofeng. Lu Ming's voice was heard. What? Everyone, including Tianxing and Shui Chu, was stunned. The ratio to handover is the same as Mount Xiaofeng? In Mount Xiaofeng, most people could keep half of the primordial divine crystals. They only had to hand over 5 out of 10 divine crystals. That was possible here too? Most people thought that they had misheard and were dreaming. Wasn't this treatment a little too generous? In Fengyan Mountain, they could condense 1 primordial divine crystal a month and 12 pieces a year. That would be 1,200 pieces in 100 years. If they handed over half, they would still have 600 pieces. In Mount Xiaofeng, they could only condense 5 pieces in 100 years. The difference was like heaven and earth. What? If you don't want this ratio, then hand over more. Lu Ming said lightly. No, thank you, Alliance Leader. Thank you, Alliance Leader. Tianxing and the others quickly bowed to Lu Ming. Their hearts were burning with passion. In the past, they had no choice but to do so. Now, they were more sincere to Lu Ming. At least in this world, they would sincerely support Lu Ming. Lu Ming smiled. These people had risked their lives to follow him to Fengyan Mountain. Naturally, he would not mistreat them. If other people joined them in the future, they would not receive such treatment. All right, let's continue. Lu Ming waved his hand and went to the depths of the valley alone. In the depths of the valley, there was a small cave. It was very quiet and suitable for cultivation. Not bad. Lu Ming smiled and sat cross-legged in the cave. He did not take out the primordial divine crystal to refine. Instead, he carefully felt the pressure from the outside world. Indeed, under this pressure, his understanding of the origin divine power factor increased rapidly. It was even faster than when he was cultivating under the primordial god statue. After cultivating for 2 days, Lu Ming took out another piece of primordial divine crystal to refine. He realized that when he was refining the primordial divine crystal, it did not affect his understanding of the origin divine power factor. When refining the primordial divine crystal, the ancient god's heart would refine it instinctively. It did not require too much effort. Soon, it had been 3 months since Lu Ming and the others arrived at Fengyan Mountain. Boom! Right at this moment, a loud explosion came from outside the valley. Lu Ming opened his eyes and ended his cultivation. Soon, a member of the Dragon Alliance rushed in and reported, Alliance Leader, this is bad. The other forces of Fengyan Mountain are here. They really came? Lu Ming muttered. Fengyan Mountain had many forces of different sizes. These forces were fighting for territory and often killed each other. Their arrival here would definitely not be peaceful. Once they were discovered, they would definitely be attacked. After 3 months of peace, they were finally discovered. Let's go. Lu Ming took a step forward and turned into a ray of light as he rushed out of the valley. Soon, Lu Ming arrived outside the valley. Outside the valley, Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the other members of the Dragon Alliance gathered together and guarded the entrance of the valley. At the front of the valley, there were 3 young men standing there with cold expressions. Chapter 3408. 3 young men in white robes stood there coldly as they scanned the members of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming stepped out and landed in front of Tianxing and the others. Alliance Leader. Tianxing and the others bowed at Lu Ming. You are the alliance leader of this stupid dragon alliance? The young man in the middle of the three young men in white robes asked. This person was quite handsome and had a tiger mark in the middle of his brows. He looked quite majestic. Lu Ming didn't answer him and looked around. He noticed that there was a deep slash mark on the stone tablet. The words Dragon Alliance on it were destroyed beyond recognition. A murderous look flashed across Lu Ming's eyes. The stone steel that he had painstakingly fixed up was actually destroyed. Anger rose from his heart, and he became even more daring. His face darkened. Kid, I asked you a question. Didn't you hear me? The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows shouted coldly as murderous intent flashed across his eyes. May I know why the few of you have come to the Dragon Alliance? Lu Ming suppressed his anger and asked. Why? Haha, do you know that this is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance? Without the consent of the Cloud Sky Alliance, you formed an alliance here, cultivated here, and condensed the origin divine crystals here. What crime do you think you have committed? What is your crime? The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows said coldly. What? Cloud Sky Alliance? Lu Ming was stunned. It was actually the Cloud Sky Alliance. This was too much of a coincidence. Previously, he had killed 2 people from the Cloud Sky Alliance in the Breeze Mountain. He did not expect to run into the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory as soon as he arrived at the Wind Cloud Mountain. This was fate. No wonder the other party's clothes were so familiar. This is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance. How come I don't know? Lu Ming calmed himself down and smiled faintly. Nonsense. The Wind Cloud Mountain is occupied by different forces. This is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance. You have trespassed here and refined the primordial divine chi here. This is a crime punishable by death. However, we can give you a chance now. Join the Cloud Sky Alliance and become our slaves. We can spare your lives. The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows said coldly, I'm sorry. We don't have the habit of becoming other people's slaves. This area belongs to the Dragon Alliance. Cloud Sky Alliance, move aside. Lu Ming waved his hand casually. What? Kid, what did you say? You are courting death. The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows. He had long sensed that Lu Ming's group of people had low cultivation levels. The strongest among them was only a 7th-tier divine king. They were most likely from a small mountain. This kind of thing often happened. Some small mountains felt that they were strong enough and wanted to develop in the famed mountains. They wanted to occupy a territory in the famed mountains, but in the end, they were all wiped out. Otherwise, they would become the slaves of those major powers and be responsible for condensing the primordial divine crystals. What's the point of talking to them? Just kill them. His cultivation was at the peak of the 7th layer of the Divine King realm. At the same time, his body swelled up and he turned into a giant beast. It was his primordial divine body. Is it equivalent to the purple-armored ancient god body? Lu Ming muttered. This young man's strength was similar to the 2 young men who had killed their way to Breeze Mountain. He was extremely strong. However, Lu Ming did not feel any pressure at all. Bang! Lu Ming stepped forward and activated the battle character secret art. His fighting strength increased by 4 times. The overbearing god's spear appeared in his hand, and he thrust it forward. A giant spear light formed and smashed down on his opponent like a mountain. The giant beast roared and used its primordial secret art to fight back against Lu Ming. A terrifying explosion occurred and a shockwave swept out. The genius of the Cloud Sky Alliance was knocked back and his body trembled. Lu Ming's cultivation had reached the 6th layer of the Divine King realm. He had broken through all 11 types of divine powers, and his fighting strength had increased. He did not need to use his primordial divine body to defeat his opponent. Swoosh! After defeating the other party with 1 move, Lu Ming took another step forward and attacked with the overbearing divine spear. The overbearing god's spear struck down with a violent whistling sound. The other white-robed young man's face changed. Apparently, they had not expected Lu Ming to be so strong. How dare you fight back? Let's attack together and kill this kid. The young man with the tiger mark on his forehead roared. His body pounced forward like a wild beast. In the process, His body grew rapidly, and he turned into a giant tiger that was 10,000 meters tall. The giant tiger was covered in white scales, and its fangs were protruding. It looked ferocious. When it roared, the entire valley shook. Tianxing and the others were shaken, and they retreated back into the valley. At the same time, the third white-robed young man also used his primordial secret art and charged at Lu Ming. The three of them attacked at the same time, and their power was terrifying. Good timing. Lu Ming was not afraid at all. The divine power in his body continued to be activated. Above his head, the Gate of Domination and the void-shattering sword appeared one after another. All of them shone brightly and charged at the three of them. 3 primordial secret arts. The giant tiger exclaimed and spat out a beam of white light. Its power was terrifying. Wherever it passed, the void exploded, and it hit the Gate of Domination. Clang! The Gate of Domination shook, and the giant tiger's beam of white light was destroyed. The terrifying power forced the giant tiger to retreat. As for the other members of the Cloud Sky Alliance, they were sent flying and crashed into a huge rock, causing cracks to appear on the rock. The rocks here were extremely hard. If they were outside, they would have destroyed the heavens and earth. What a powerful primordial divine body! Lu Ming's eyes moved. He was shocked by the giant tiger's primordial divine body. The giant tiger's primordial divine body was stronger than the others. It was even stronger than Lu Ming's. Lu Ming estimated that it was equivalent to the middle stage of the purple-armored ancient god body. Therefore, its overall power was above the other two. However, it did not make much of a difference to Lu Ming. Wong. The Gate of Domination buzzed and vibrated. It became bigger and bigger. The suction force from it became stronger and stronger. It continued to suppress the giant tiger. The Gate of Domination was the first primordial secret art that Lu Ming had comprehended. Moreover, he had comprehended it on his own. Until now, his understanding of the Gate of Domination had deepened and its power had increased. Boom! The Gate of Domination collided with the giant tiger for the second time. The giant tiger screamed, and one of its claws exploded. It was drenched in blood as it retreated. "We'll help you," the other 2 members of the Yuntian Alliance shouted, and were about to rush over. "You should worry about yourselves," Lu Ming said coldly. The Overlord God Spear and the void-shattering sword attacked the 2 of them. Bam! Bam! The 2 of them were defeated, and their bodies were sent flying. One of them was pierced by the spear radiance, and the other was slashed by the void-shattering sword. He was almost cut in half. This time, the injuries were more serious. Myriad Dao Dragon Emperor. Myriad Dao Dragon Emperor. Chapter 3409. The 2 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance were severely injured by Lu Ming. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and couldn't even maintain their primitive divine bodies. Their bodies shrunk and returned to their normal state. Only the giant tiger was left, and he was at a disadvantage. The Gate of Domination pressed down, and the giant tiger screamed in pain. A large part of his head exploded, and his flesh and bones flew everywhere. The giant tiger screamed in pain as his huge body flew out and hit a huge rock. With a crack, the huge rock shattered, and the sound of bones breaking resounded throughout the area. The giant tiger's body was deformed as he was severely injured. His body shrunk rapidly, and he couldn't maintain his primitive divine body. He returned to his human form. After returning to his human form, his face was pale, and he continued to spit out blood. His aura was extremely weak. Bam! Lu Ming landed in front of the youth with the tiger mark on his forehead and stared at him coldly. The youth shuddered and broke out in cold sweat. "With your cultivation, you want to destroy the Dragon Alliance?" A mocking voice was heard. "Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have some strength. When the experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance come out, you will die without a burial place." The youth with the tiger mark on his forehead shouted. He was still threatening Lu Ming. Bam! Lu Ming kicked the other party's face. Teeth and blood splattered everywhere. The other party's face almost exploded from the kick. "You still dare to threaten me? Do you want to die?" Lu Ming said coldly. The 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance didn't dare to speak anymore. Then, Lu Ming circulated his divine power and grabbed the storage rings of the 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance. He said, "This time, I won't kill you. These 3 storage rings will be the interest. Get lost. Go back and tell your Alliance Master that if he's not convinced, he can come and try." After speaking, Lu Ming ignored the 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance and left. The 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance were surprised that Lu Ming didn't kill them. They let out a long breath and struggled to get up and leave. Before they left, their eyes flashed with cold light and their killing intent was as sharp as a knife. "Alliance Master, if you let them go, the Cloud Sky Alliance will definitely take revenge." Heaven Walker worriedly asked, "Do you think that the Cloud Sky Alliance won't take revenge if you kill them?" Lu Ming smiled faintly. Tianxing was speechless. The upper echelons of the Cloud Sky Alliance must have known that the members of the Cloud Sky Alliance had come. Even if they killed those 3 people, the Cloud Sky Alliance would still come. It made no difference whether he let it go or not. Moreover, it's just 3 small fries. They won't be able to affect the overall situation. Who knows, they might even be able to produce primordial divine crystals for us later on. Also, all of you should quickly refine the primordial divine crystals and strive to break through as soon as possible so that you can help me. Aren't you embarrassed that I have to personally take action every single time? Lu Ming said. This, Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others blushed, their faces burning. Indeed, every time, Lu Ming would personally take action, and they could only watch from the sidelines, which made them feel ashamed. Don't worry, Alliance Master. We'll definitely work hard to cultivate and increase our strength so that we can establish ourselves on the famed mountains as soon as possible. Not bad. We will definitely work hard to cultivate. The others spoke one after another, their gazes resolute. All right, go and cultivate. Leave the matter of Yuntian Alliance to me. Lu Ming nodded his head and said, actually, the talents of the Dragon Alliance weren't low. They weren't any weaker than the geniuses of the famed mountains. Perhaps it was because of their age, or because they had entered this world relatively late, causing their cultivation and primordial divine bodies to not be very high. Therefore, their combat strength couldn't compare to the geniuses of the famed mountains. As long as they were given time, and with the primordial divine crystals, their cultivation and strength would quickly increase. This time, I've obtained quite a few primordial divine crystals. These are for you. Lu Ming took out a storage ring that he had just obtained. As expected, there were quite a few primordial divine crystals in it. He gave them all to the Dragon Alliance for them to refine. Anyway, he had enough primordial divine crystals now. He could use them to increase the cultivation of others first so that he could gain more in the future. Tianxing and the others took the primordial divine crystals and went to refine them happily. As for Lu Ming, he sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley, waiting for the Cloud Sky Alliance to arrive. As expected, a few days later, many figures rushed over from afar. Not long after, at least a few hundred figures appeared not far away. They formed a fan shape and surrounded the valley where the Dragon Alliance was. They did not hide their cold, murderous intent. They're here. Lu Ming sneered. He looked around and saw the 3 young men who had arrived a few days ago. I spared your lives last time. How dare the 3 of you come again? Are you courting death? Lu Ming glanced at the 3 young men, and his faint voice spread throughout the entire place. Don't be arrogant. This time, the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance and a few Vice Alliance Masters are here. The ones who will die are you. The young man with the tiger mark on his forehead shouted. His eyes were cold. You're the Alliance Master of the Dragon Alliance. At that moment, a young man stepped out from the Cloud Sky Alliance. The young man was burly, and he wore a fiery red armor. What was strange was that he had 6 arms. His eyes were ferocious, and his violent aura pressed down on Lu Ming. Although he had turned into a human, he still had 6 arms. His original form was most likely a terrifying living being. That's right. It's me. Who are you? Lu Ming said casually. Cloud Sky Alliance Master, Nye Huangtian. The young man with 6 arms said, Oh, it's the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. What brings you here? Let me tell you, the Dragon Alliance is poor and can't entertain you. Lu Ming said with a smile, Don't play dumb. I'll give you one last chance. Become a slave of the Cloud Sky Alliance, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, you'll die. The Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance, Nie Quangtian, said with killing intent. It's the same nonsense again. There's no point in talking anymore. Hurry up and attack. I'd like to see how powerful you are. Lu Ming spoke, exuding a strong fighting intent. He was telling the truth. He really wanted to see how powerful the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance was. He was curious about how powerful a leader who could establish a force in Fengyan Mountain was. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance said coldly with killing intent. Alliance Master, there's no need to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife. You don't have to do it yourself. I'll do it. Another young man stepped out from behind Nie Quangtian and said loudly. Nie Quangtian's eyes flickered and he said, All right, you'll do it. Don't show any mercy and kill him. As the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance, it wasn't appropriate for him to do it himself. He could let others do it to find out how powerful Lu Ming was. Young man, who are you? Lu Ming asked. Shueshang, the Vice Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. The young man who walked out from behind replied. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Shueshang attacked. His body turned into a ray of sword light and pierced through the air towards Lu Ming. Wan Dao Dragon Emperor. Wan Dao Dragon Emperor. Chapter 34:10. Shueshang's body emitted a resplendent light. His body was like a sword, turning into a ray of sword light that shot towards Lu Ming. The space around him exploded. His speed was unimaginable. Shua. Lu Ming performed the Nine Heavens Kuan Pong technique and his figure flashed rapidly, wanting to avoid Shueshang's attack. However, he was still a little late. His body was swept by the aftershock of the sword gleam, emitting a sizzling sound and sparks flying in all directions. Then, Lu Ming's body was forcefully torn apart by the sword gleam, leaving behind a sword wound. How sharp! Lu Ming's heart shook. Just now, he had used the heavenly devil golden body. His body was even harder than a divine weapon. However, he was still cut by the sword light. It showed how powerful his opponent's attack was. Shueshang's sword light flickered and changed direction. He charged towards Lu Ming again. His speed was slightly faster than before. 8th layer Divine King Realm. Shueshang's aura was shockingly powerful. His cultivation base had reached the 8th layer of the Divine King Realm. He was even stronger than the members of the Yuntian Alliance that Lu Ming had fought before. Divine Dragon Dharma Idol. Lu Ming waved his fist. Dragon roars resounded in the air. The Divine Dragon Dharma Idol art was used. 9-clawed dragon appeared and roared towards the sky. They continuously pounced on Shueshang. Boom, boom, boom. The sword light bombarded the 9-clawed dragon. The 9-clawed dragon roared violently. Then, one by one, the 9-clawed dragon was cut in half. Brat, you can't stop me. Shueshang's voice came from the sword light. Is that so? The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He then shouted in a low voice, Explode! Immediately, all of the 9-clawed divine dragons exploded. Destructive energy swept out in all directions and bombarded the sword light continuously. Clang! The sword light vibrated and a sword cry resounded in the sky. Then, the sword light retreated and Shueshang's body was revealed. He wasn't injured, but his expression was ugly. You're indeed strong. No wonder you could defeat my Yuntian Alliance's members. However, that was just a warm-up. Now, the warm-up is over, said Shueshang. His voice was unusually cold. He didn't hide his cold killing intent. Warming up? I haven't even started warming up yet. Lu Ming pursed his lips. Shameless boasting. I'll kill you right now. Shueshang shouted coldly. Then, his body began to swell. In the next moment, he turned into a white crane. The white crane was gigantic, at least a few hundred meters tall. Its entire body was covered in snow-white feathers, emitting a dazzling white light. At the same time, a bronze battle sword appeared above its head. This was its original secret technique. Clang! The ringing of a sword resounded in all directions as Xue Shang once again transformed into a streak of sword light that shot towards Lu Ming. The sword chi whistled. This time, its power was 10 times more violent than before. Lu Ming's face turned serious as well. He gripped the void with his hand, and the tyrant god's spear appeared in his hand. The tyrant god's spear trembled and a long river of spear Dao surged forward. Boom! The long river of spear Dao collided with the opponent's sword light, and a terrifying explosion erupted. The long river of spear Dao was formed from countless tiny spear lights. When they burst forth together, they possessed a destructive power. But at this moment, those spear lights were constantly being broken apart by the sword light. The sword light broke through the river, constantly approaching Lu Ming and attacking Lu Ming. Ruler's Gate, Voidbreaker Sword. Next, Lu Ming's heart shook once more. The Ruler's Gate and Voidbreaker Sword flew out, emitting a dazzling light. They smashed forward, each bombarding the sword light. Clang! Clang! 2 shocking explosions erupted. Terrifying energy swept out in all directions and landed on the incomparably hard ground, creating craters. Then, the sword light that Xue Shang had transformed into was once more sent flying. Die! The white crane that Xue Shang had transformed into had a cold gaze. With a long cry, the bronze battle sword merged with him. With a flap of his wings, he once more transformed into a streak of sword light that slashed towards Lu Ming. This time, his speed was astonishing. In a flash, the sword light appeared above Lu Ming's head. Many people didn't even see it clearly. However, Lu Ming still caught its trajectory. Clang! The Voidbreaker Sword seemed to be able to break through the void. It was also astonishingly fast. It appeared above Lu Ming's head first and blocked the opponent's attack. Next, the Ruler's Gate descended from the sky, emitting a terrifying suction force that wanted to bind the opponent. Then, Lu Ming shook the Tyrant God's spear and charged upwards, bombarding the sword light. Lu Ming's secret skills of origins complemented each other seamlessly. Clang! The sword light crazily vibrated, and the light on it was almost scattered. With a swoosh, it was sent flying again. This time, Xue Shang was injured. A large piece of his neat feathers had fallen off. White feathers fluttered in the air, and blood flowed out of his mouth. So this is your strength? It's not much? Lu Ming's disdainful voice resounded. At that moment, Lu Ming was in the 6th King God realm, while his opponent was only in the 8th King God realm. If he wasn't a terrifying genius, Lu Ming could defeat him easily. He didn't even need to use his ancient god body. Damn it! Xue Shang shouted angrily. However, he was astonished. He had used his full strength just now, but he was still suppressed by Lu Ming. He was astonished. Nie Huangtian and the others were also astonished. Today, we're here for a battle between forces, not a personal battle. There's no need to fight him alone. Let's attack together and kill him first, Nie Huangtian said, his eyes shining with cold light. Lu Ming's strength was too terrifying. If he broke through to the 7th King God realm, the Cloud Sky Alliance would have no place to stand. That's right. Let's attack together and kill him, another young man said loudly. Bang! 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 After injuring Nie Huangtian, a total of 3 young men stepped forward. Their powerful auras surged. They formed a triangle with Xue Shang and pressed down on Lu Ming. 8th King God realm. All of them were in the 8th King God realm. Among them, Nie Huangtian was the strongest. He was in the peak 8th King God realm. They must be the Alliance Master and the 3 Vice Alliance Masters of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Lu Ming's heart stirred. The Cloud Sky Alliance had 1 Alliance Master and 3 Vice Alliance Masters. They were the 4 strongest people in the Cloud Sky Alliance. Attack! Nie Huangtian shouted. A violent aura surged from his body. His body swelled, and he turned into a giant ape that was 10,000 meters tall. The giant ape was red and had 6 arms. Its aura was extremely violent. It was the primitive divine body. At the same time, the other 2 Vice Alliance Masters also displayed their primitive divine bodies. They had seen Lu Ming's strength. Therefore, they used their full strength and didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, Xue Shang also attacked. He turned into a dazzling sword light and charged toward Lu Ming. The four experts worked together to block Lu Ming's vital points. They wanted to kill Lu Ming with one blow. Roar! Lu Ming roared. His body grew rapidly, and he turned into a purple-armored ancient god. Kill! Lu Ming shouted. He held the overbearing god's spear in one hand and the ruler's gate in the other. He swept the overbearing god's spear in all directions. Dragon Emperor Wan Dao, Dragon Emperor Wan Dao. Chapter 34:11. Boom! Boom! Lu Ming blocked the attacks of Nie Huangtian and the rest in such a barbaric way. Four consecutive booms rang out as a huge explosion occurred in this region. Terrifying energy blasted into the ground, creating huge craters and sending rubble flying everywhere. Whoosh! Whoosh! Nie Huangtian and the other three retreated hastily. They retreated a few thousand meters, but so did Lu Ming. He felt numb all over. They are indeed powerful. No wonder they are the strongest four in the Cloud Sky Alliance. Lu Ming exclaimed in his heart. Lu Ming did not gain the upper hand in the face of the four experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance, even with his purple-armored ancient god body. The main reason was that his opponent's primitive divine bodies were too advanced. Lu Ming's purple-armored ancient god body was equivalent to the early stage of purple-armored ancient god body. The four experts' primitive divine bodies were all stronger than Lu Ming's. In terms of ancient god body, the weakest one had reached the middle stage of purple-armored ancient god body. Nie Huangtian, especially, was probably equivalent to the late stage of purple-armored ancient god body. His strength was shocking. This was normal. He had been cultivating in Fengyun Mountain for many years and had refined many primitive divine crystals. It was normal for his primitive divine body to be stronger than Lu Ming's. We must get rid of this kid. Kill! Nie Huangtian and the other three retreated. They then roared and attacked Lu Ming. Everyone used their trump cards. All kinds of terrifying attacks blasted toward Lu Ming from all directions. Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. He focused on the attacks. A bright moon and a sun appeared above his head. In addition, there was also the primordial divine dragon horn. Lu Ming used the 6 secret skills of origin to fight the 4 experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Both of them had turned into their primitive divine bodies. Although their bodies were huge, their speed was astonishingly fast. Strong winds were blowing in this area. Their bodies kept flashing and colliding with each other. In the blink of an eye, both of them had exchanged dozens of moves. The subordinates of the Cloud Sky Alliance retreated again and again. It was difficult for them to gain a foothold nearby. How can this kid be so strong? The young man with the tiger-shaped mark between his eyebrows, who had come to make trouble last time, was horrified. Lu Ming's strength was beyond his imagination. It was too terrifying. He could actually fight the 4 strongest people of the Cloud Sky Alliance to such an extent. What if Lu Ming wanted to kill him last time? Thinking about it, he felt a wave of lingering fear. In the distance, there were some other people hiding in the dark. These people were experts from other forces in Fengyun Mountain. This time, the Cloud Sky Alliance had mobilized all its forces, which naturally alerted the other forces. These forces naturally sent experts to investigate. What's the background of the Dragon League? Their hegemon is so strong. He only has the strength of the 6th King God layer, but he can fight against 4 strong cultivators of the Cloud Sky Union alone. I don't know. I've never heard of it before. It's probably from a small mountain. It's possible that some terrifying geniuses will accumulate strength on the small mountains. When their wings are fully grown, they will slaughter their way to the famed mountains. These people discussed secretly as they stared at the battlefield without blinking. They wanted to see who would win in the end. Awesome! Awesome! Ha ha ha! The more Lu Ming fought, the happier he felt. In the past few years, his cultivation had broken through the 6th King God layer and his ancient god body had reached the purple armor ancient god body. However, he hadn't fought with his full strength yet. At this moment, he felt extremely satisfied. However, Nie Huangtian and the others were astonished. They had cultivated here for many years. Their ancient god bodies had reached an astonishing level. Together with other secret techniques, such as the Origin secret techniques, their fighting strength was extremely strong. In the outside world, They were almost invincible existences at the same level. However, at this moment, even though their cultivation was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming's, the 4 of them couldn't defeat Lu Ming. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 moves. It's about time to send them on their way. A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. His aura suddenly surged. The battle character secret art increased his fighting strength by 5 times. Previously, he hadn't activated the battle character secret art. Now, he had. After activating the battle character secret art, Lu Ming's strength was above Nie Quangtian and the other 3. Boom, boom, boom. After 4 consecutive explosions, Nie Quangtian and the other 3 grunted and were pushed back. You still have strength left? Nie Quangtian and the other 3 were shocked. I'll send you on your way. Lu Ming shouted coldly. The 6 origin secret techniques were pushed to the extreme. Divine power poured into the secret techniques as they shone brightly and shot toward Nie Quangtian and the other 3. Block it! Nie Quangtian and the other 3 shouted and tried their best to block it. However, they didn't notice that the overbearing god spear in Lu Ming's hand was covered in lightning. Lu Ming not only used the battle character secret art to increase his fighting strength by 5 times, but he also secretly borrowed Qiuqiu's power. Since the 4 of them were attacking him, why couldn't he borrow Qiuqiu's power? While the other origin secret techniques attacked Nie Quangtian and the other 2, the overbearing god spear collided with Xueshang's swordlight. Xueshang was already injured by Lu Ming, and his strength was somewhat damaged. Now that Lu Ming had activated the battle character secret art and borrowed Qiuqiu's power, Xueshang couldn't resist at all. Boom! Xueshang's sword light collapsed. At the same time, Qiuqiu's lightning made his body stiffen. Kill! Lu Ming shouted coldly. The Overlord Divine's spear pierced mercilessly. With a p sound, it directly pierced through Xueshang's head. Xueshang didn't even have time to scream before he was killed by Lu Ming. His huge body fell to the ground and quickly reverted to its original form. All of this happened in a flash. Nie Quangtian and the other 2 had just resisted Lu Ming's other origin secret techniques and were forced to retreat. Before they could react, Xueshang had been killed. However, Lu Ming had already moved. After killing Xueshang, he didn't stop and attacked another deputy leader of the Yuntian Alliance. This move also borrowed Qiuqiu's power. The Vice Alliance master screamed miserably, his body retreating explosively. Half of his body exploded, seriously injured. Then, the Gate of Domination came down and crushed his body into pieces. He died on the spot. In an instant, Lu Ming had killed 2 deputy leaders of the Yuntian Alliance. Nie Quangtian and the others finally realized what had happened and were almost scared to death. At this moment, Lu Ming's strength was far above theirs. Attack! Everyone! Attack together and kill this man! Nie Quangtian shouted. He wanted to summon all the members of the Yuntian Alliance to attack together and kill Lu Ming. Whoever dares to attack will die. Lu Ming shouted coldly. His killing intent was like a tide. The members of the Yuntian Alliance felt a chill in their hearts. Their eyes flickered, but no one attacked. These people came from different races in the primitive universe. They were all geniuses. How could they really submit to others? Previously, they had joined the Yuntian Alliance to seek protection so that they could establish themselves in Fengyun Mountain. In return, they had to hand over a large number of origin divine crystals. They had no loyalty to Nie Quangtian and the others. Dragon Emperor Wan Dao. Dragon Emperor Wan Dao. Chapter 34:12. To put it bluntly, the members of Yuntian Alliance and Nie Quangtian were just partners. Nie Quangtian and the others had powerful combat strength. They would protect them and hand over the primordial divine crystals. Once they left this world, they would not care about each other. There was no loyalty. Usually, they would fight and kill each other. Now that they had encountered a terrifying existence like Lu Ming, they would probably be killed if they went up. Why would they go up? Naturally, no one would go up. Damn it! Damn it! Nie Quangtian roared in anger. At this moment, Lu Ming had already controlled all of his origin's secret skills to attack them. Lu Ming held the Overlord's spear in his hand. The spear radiance was like a mountain as it smashed towards the last vice leader. The vice leader could not block it at all and was severely injured. Then, the void-shattering sword flew past and chopped off his head. The three vice leaders of Yuntian Alliance were all dead. Nie Huangtian roared in fear. He used all of his strength to block Lu Ming's origin secret skills. Then, he turned around and tried to escape. However, a bolt of lightning flashed by. It was too fast and landed on Nie Huangtian. Nie Huangtian's body went numb, and he could not help but stiffen. Boom! The gate of domination became tens of thousands of feet tall and smashed towards Nie Huangtian's head. If that hit, Nie Huangtian would definitely die. Roar! Nie Huangtian let out a terrifying roar. The fiery red light around his body skyrocketed. At the critical moment, he moved. His 6 arms suddenly waved and bombarded the Dominator's gate with attacks, blocking the Dominator's gate. The origin divine body is equivalent to the later stage of the purple-armored ancient god body. It is indeed extraordinary. He can still move after being hit by lightning, Lu Ming also exclaimed. However, he did not slow down. He stepped forward and appeared not far from Nie Huangtian. He held the gate of domination in his left hand and the Overlord's spear in his right hand. He swung the spear and smashed it towards Nie Huangtian's head. Lu Ming had activated the battle incantation to increase his combat strength by 5 times. In addition to the 11 types of divine powers, 7 of which were third awakened, and the purple-armored ancient god body, his strength was too strong. In addition, he also attacked Nie Huangtian with other origin secret skills. Nie Huangtian roared. His eyes were bloodshot. He was going all out. His 6 arms were holding 5 different divine artifacts. One of his arms was holding his origin secret technique. Its 6 arms waved desperately to block Lu Ming's attacks. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had exchanged more than a dozen moves. Pacha! Crack! Cracks appeared on the divine weapons in Nie Huangtian's hands. Then, they all exploded. Only the origin secret technique remained. Nie Huangtian was pushed back by the power of Yi Li, and blood gushed out of his mouth in the air. Kill! Lu Ming did not borrow Qiuqiu's strength. He wanted to kill Nie Huangtian with his own strength. Boom! The gate of domination collided with one of Nie Huangtian's arms. Nie Huangtian's arm exploded, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. Puchi! The void-breaking sword flashed and cut off Nie Huangtian's other arm. In addition, the moon of the moon and the sun of the sun were shedding horrifying rays of light. Nie Huangtian's body seemed to be burning and turning into ashes. If you want to die, let's die together. Nie Huangtian roared. His body emitted a dazzling blood-red light. He wanted to burn himself completely and take Lu Ming down with him. However, Lu Ming used his yin-yang god eye. Many yin and yang talismans appeared and wrapped around Nie Huangtian tightly, preventing him from exploding. Then, the Overlord God's spear, the gate of domination, the void-breaking sword, the immemorial divine dragon horn, all of them bombarded Nie Huangtian. This time, Nie Huangtian could not resist. He screamed as his body exploded under the attacks. He died on the spot. Since then, the 4 leaders of the Yuntian Alliance had been killed by Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes were like lightning. He glanced at the other members of the Yuntian Alliance and said, "The 4 leaders of the Yuntian Alliance are all dead. Who else wants to fight?" The members of the Yuntian Alliance turned pale. How could they dare to fight when the 4 leaders were dead? Most of the members of the Yuntian Alliance were in the 7th or 6th layer of the King God realm. They were no match for Lu Ming. They would be courting death if they went up. No, no, no. They quickly shook their heads. Among them, the young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows was the most frightened. His face was as pale as snow. Last time, he had threatened Lu Ming that he would kill Lu Ming. Now that his backer was dead, how would Lu Ming deal with him? As expected, Lu Ming looked at him and said, "What about you? Didn't you want to kill me?" The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows almost fell to the ground. He struggled to maintain his balance and said, "I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. Last time, I spoke carelessly. The leader is powerful. I'm willing to join the Dragon Alliance and work for him." "Oh, you're willing to join the Dragon Alliance?" Lu Ming asked. "Yes, I'm willing. The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows quickly said, "You can join the Dragon Alliance too." Lu Ming nodded. He looked at the other members of the Yuntian Alliance and said, "What about you? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you joining the Dragon Alliance?" Nie Huangtian and the other three were killed. In the future, the territory of the Yuntian Alliance will belong to the Dragon Alliance. If you don't join the Dragon Alliance, you won't be able to establish yourself in this territory. Do you understand? The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows immediately shouted. He immediately treated himself as a member of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming smiled faintly and didn't stop him. "I'm willing to join the Dragon Alliance." "Me too." Immediately, many members of the Yuntian Alliance joined the Dragon Alliance. To them, it was the same whether they joined the Yuntian Alliance or the Dragon Alliance. As long as they were protected and had a place to cultivate and condense the original divine crystals, it was fine. In the end, almost all the members of the Yuntian Alliance were willing to join the Dragon Alliance. There were more than 200 of them. Lu Ming was overjoyed. With so many people helping him condense the original divine crystals, it felt great. Although he couldn't refine all of them now, he could take them out and slowly refine them in the future. Plus, he had family and friends. If he sold them, they would be priceless. Countless people would fight over them, especially those who cultivated the original divine body. "How did you hand them in before? What's the ratio of original divine crystals?" Lu Ming asked the young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows. His name was Lu Nong. "We used to hand in 10 original divine crystals. We handed in 9 and kept one for ourselves." Lu Nong answered honestly. 9 out of 10. Lu Ming nodded. This ratio was considered good in the famed mountains. Many forces had to hand in 19 out of 20. Actually, many small forces had a good ratio. That was the only way to attract people to join them. If a small force and a large force handed in the same ratio, others would definitely join the large force. Chapter 34:13. The ratio of primordial divine crystals submitted by the Dragon Alliance is different from that of Yuntian Alliance. Lu Ming said. Different? Many people's hearts sank as their eyes flickered. Could it be that the ratio of Dragon Alliance's primordial divine crystals was worse, and they had to submit 19 out of 20? If that was the case, many people started to consider if they should find an opportunity to leave the Dragon Alliance and join other forces. They looked at Lu Ming and waited for Lu Ming's answer. Lu Ming slowly extended 3 fingers. Could it be that only 1 out of 30 can be kept? That ratio is too low. Why don't we go to those small mountains? Many people were shocked. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through their minds. Some people decided to find an opportunity to leave Fengyan Mountain and go to those small mountains. With their cultivation, it wouldn't be difficult for them to become a mountain master if they went to those small mountains. Although the speed of condensing primordial divine crystals in those small mountains was too slow, if they could become a mountain master, they would be able to command dozens of subordinates and earn a decent income. After all, it was better than keeping 1 out of 30. At that moment, Lu Ming spoke. His voice rang in everyone's ears. 30%. You can keep 30% of the primordial divine crystals that you condense. Lu Ming smiled faintly. What? 30%? Did I hear wrongly? Everyone from Yuntian Alliance was stunned as they looked at Lu Ming with their mouths agape. 30%? Lu Ming actually said that they could keep 30%? 30% meant that they could keep 3 out of every 10 primordial divine crystals if they handed in 7 out of 10. This ratio was 3 times higher than what Yuntian Alliance had previously given. This ratio was unique in the famed mountains. Yuntian Alliance had given them 1 out of 10 primordial divine crystals, and that was already the best treatment. Some of the bigger forces would keep 1 out of 20 or even 1 out of 30 primordial divine crystals. On the other hand, Lu Ming gave them a 30% ratio. Alliance leader, is this true? Someone asked in disbelief. Of course it's true. Why? Don't you want it? Lu Ming said indifferently. He had given 50% to the people who had come with him from Mount Breeze. However, he naturally wouldn't give 50% to these people. That was too much. 30% was enough. Thank you, Alliance Master. The others were overjoyed, and they all bowed to Lu Ming to express their gratitude. All right, do you have a map? Take over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory. Also, tell me about the current distribution of forces in the Wind Cloud Mountain. Lu Ming immediately started to make arrangements. At the same time, he also understood the distribution of forces in Mt. Fengyan. In Fengyan Mountain, there were a total of dozens of forces of varying sizes. They were divided into 4 regions. Lu Ming and the others were currently in the eastern region. In the eastern region, there were more than 10 forces of various sizes. The original Cloud Sky Alliance was only one of the weaker forces. After taking over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory and making the necessary arrangements, Lu Ming did not attack the other forces. As for the other forces, after seeing that Lu Ming had only taken over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory, they did not attack Lu Ming and the others. For the time being, everything was peaceful. After making all the arrangements, Lu Ming continued to cultivate in seclusion. Now that he had more and more Origin Divine Crystals, he would receive a large number of Origin Divine Crystals every once in a while. He couldn't use them all, so he naturally had to seize the time to refine them. Lu Ming took out a piece of Origin Divine Crystal and started to refine it. Time flew by, month after month, year after year. In the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed since Lu Ming had arrived at Fengyan Mountain. In 20 years, Lu Ming had refined more than 1,000 pieces of Origin Divine Crystals. After refining so many Origin Divine Crystals, Lu Ming had made great progress in all aspects. First, it was the purple-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming had broken through to the intermediate purple-armored ancient god body. In terms of cultivation, he had also reached the peak of the 6th Divine King realm. Moreover, after cultivating in such an environment, Lu Ming had another breakthrough in one of his Origin Divine Power factors and had completed the 3rd awakening. In this way, he had a total of 8 Origin Divine Power factors and had completed the 3rd awakening. It was worth mentioning that over the years, especially in recent years, more and more people had sought refuge with Lu Ming and joined the Dragon League. The main reason was that he could keep 30% of the primordial divine crystals in the Dragon Alliance. That was too tempting. The news had already spread and reached the ears of the other forces in the Fengyan Mountain. It was especially so for the other forces in the eastern region. When the supreme talents of these forces heard about it, many of them sought refuge with Lu Ming. Now, the number of people in the Dragon League had increased to more than 400. Every year, Lu Ming would receive close to 3,000 pieces of primordial divine crystals. However, this had caused dissatisfaction among the leaders of the other forces. Especially in the eastern region, the number of people seeking refuge with Lu Ming was the highest. This had alerted the leaders of the other forces. The Skyheart Alliance and the Soldier Peak Alliance were the 2 largest forces in the Fengyan Mountain East region. This time, the leader of the Skyheart Alliance had invited the leaders of the other forces to gather at the Skyheart Alliance to discuss some matters. A total of 10 leaders of the forces had gathered at the Skyheart Alliance. Everyone, I believe you know that we have gathered here because of the Dragon League. What do you think we should do? The leader of the Skyheart Alliance went straight to the point. What should we do? It's simple. The Dragon League has violated the rules and allowed people to keep 30% of the Origin Divine Crystals. They have attracted our people to the Dragon League. This is unfair competition and it should not exist. The leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance said coldly. That's right. The Dragon League has broken the balance and seriously violated the rules. They have disrupted the market and they should not exist. Such a malignant tumor should be removed. The leaders of the other forces chimed in. These people were the strongest in the Fengyan Mountain East region. With just a few sentences, they had decided the fate of Lu Ming and the rest. In that case, go back and gather your men. We will head to the Dragon League and ask the leader of the Dragon League to get out of Fengyan Mountain. The leader of the Skyheart Alliance said, What if he doesn't get out? The leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance said, Then we will kill him. The leader of the Skyheart Alliance said coldly. After that, the leaders of the various forces returned to their respective bases. They led their troops and charged toward the Dragon League. As for Lu Ming, he was cultivating in seclusion. All of a sudden, someone dashed toward his place of seclusion. Lu Ming immediately sensed it and ended his cultivation. He frowned slightly. He had instructed them not to disturb him when he was cultivating in seclusion unless there was something serious. At that moment, someone rushed over. In the next instant, a young man appeared not far away and he looked panicked. "What's going on?" Lu Ming asked in a deep voice. "Alliance leader, bad news. The Skyheart Alliance and the Soldier Peak Alliance have led the other 8 forces, and they are charging toward us." The young man quickly reported with a pale face. Chapter 34:14. Skyheart Alliance and Soldier Peak Alliance. Lu Ming muttered. He naturally knew about the 2 strongest forces in the Fengyun East region. "I didn't expect them to come earlier than I expected. Let's go out and take a look." Lu Ming stood up and walked out. Soon, he arrived at the entrance of the valley. Everyone from the Dragon Alliance was gathered at the entrance of the valley. They looked outside with pale faces. That was because they were surrounded outside. As far as the eye could see, there were at least a few thousand people in the area. With a single glance, one could tell that these people were divided into 10 different groups and 10 different powers. "Why have you come to the Dragon Alliance?" Lu Ming stepped out and came to the front, asking in a deep voice. "You are the leader of the Dragon Alliance, Lu Ming?" A tall and sturdy young man with eyes as sharp as a blade stepped out and asked coldly. He exuded a terrifying aura. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could pierce through the sky. "That's right. I am Lu Ming. Who are you?" Lu Ming asked. "I am the leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance, Bing Tong." The burly young man said coldly. "So you are the leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance. Tell me, why have you come here?" Lu Ming asked again. "Simple. Lu Ming, disband the Dragon Alliance now and get out of Fengyun Mountain." Bing Tong said coldly. "What?" The members of the Dragon Alliance were shocked. To them, the Dragon Alliance was a sacred place for cultivation. They had to hand in the least amount of resources. Here, they could get enough resources to cultivate. The other party had asked Lu Ming to disband the Dragon Alliance. Once the Dragon Alliance was disbanded, they would only have 2 options. One was to leave with them, and the other was to join another force. However, they would not be treated as well as the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming laughed coldly after hearing what Bing Tong said. "What are you laughing at?" Bing Tong said coldly. "I'm laughing at how ridiculous you are. What did the Dragon Alliance do wrong? Why did the 10 forces gather and disband the Dragon Alliance?" Lu Ming asked. "Do you still not understand?" Lu Ming, the rule you set for people to only hand over 70% of their primordial divine crystals has already broken the rules and disturbed the market. That's why the Dragon Alliance shouldn't exist." Bing Tong said. "I see." Lu Ming understood that the other party was doing this because of the ratio set by the Dragon Alliance. The Dragon Alliance's profit ratio was too attractive, and it continuously attracted people from other factions to join. Thus, these people could not sit still. Rules? Who set the rules? This ratio can be set at will. You can also set it higher. No one is stopping you. Lu Ming said indifferently. To put it bluntly, these people were reluctant to give up their own interests. In this world, strength was everything. Collecting primeval divine crystals was a business that had no cost in the first place. Collecting more or less was a profit. It was just that these people were too greedy and wanted to earn more. "Looks like you're being stubborn." Bing Tong's eyes were extremely cold. "What's the point of talking nonsense with him? We've already given him a chance to live, but he doesn't know how to cherish it. Let's just kill him." A voice filled with killing intent sounded from behind Bing Tong. Following that, a figure charged out at an extremely fast speed and charged towards Lu Ming. He had yet to reach Lu Ming, but the violent force was already like a violent storm, pressing toward Lu Ming. 9th Layer God King Realm. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. The person who attacked was a 9th Layer God King Realm cultivator. He was also the leader of a faction. However, this person's cultivation was stronger than the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Boom. A palm print pressed down on Lu Ming with earth-shattering force. It was going to smash Lu Ming into a pulp. "Alliance Master, be careful." Tian Xing, Shui Chu, and the others exclaimed. Boom. Facing such an attack, Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. He instantly activated the battle character art and quadrupled his combat strength. He circulated all 11 types of divine force and the heavenly demon golden body at the same time and punched out. Boom! Lu Ming's fist collided with the palm print, and there was a loud explosion. The mountain shook, and the palm print was destroyed. The figure flew back while Lu Ming's body shook, and he took a few steps back. What a powerful force! Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. A ninth-layer God King realm cultivator who was known as a peak divine king was indeed extraordinary. To be able to become the leader of a faction, his talent was naturally top-notch and his combat strength was shocking. You're pretty good to be able to take one of my palms. Let's see how many of them you can take. A domineering voice sounded, and the figure charged towards Lu Ming. Golden light shone from his palms, and a golden brick appeared on each of his palms. Yes, the golden brick exuded an ancient aura. It was the origin source secret technique of the person. After using the origin source secret technique, the person's combat strength increased tremendously. His palm energy was as thick as a mountain, and it pressed down on Lu Ming. Bing Tong and the rest looked on indifferently, and they had no intention of taking any action. Use your full strength. Otherwise, it's not enough. Lu Ming shouted. His body swelled and turned into the purple armor ancient god body. At the same time, rays of light shot out from his body. They were all origin source secret techniques. Overbearing deity spear and overlord's gate. These origin source secret techniques appeared, and under Lu Ming's control, they smashed down on the opponent. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of collisions, the opponent's palm print was destroyed and he flew back with a ghastly expression. Then, the person roared and used his origin source body. He became 10,000 meters tall and charged towards Lu Ming. The two of them fought with all their might. After a series of collisions, Lu Ming was at a disadvantage, and he was at a disadvantage. In the end, Lu Ming activated the fight incantation and increased his combat strength by 5 times. However, he was still at a disadvantage. Although it would not be easy for the person to kill him, Lu Ming was still at a disadvantage. The person was powerful. If they were at the same level, he would not be weaker than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. In addition, the person's cultivation was 1 level higher than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. His overall combat strength was much stronger than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. Although Lu Ming could kill the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance, he was still no match for the person. These people were not ordinary cultivators. They were all top geniuses. Lu Ming could feel that the person's origin source body was much stronger than his. In terms of ancient god body, the person's origin source body was at the peak of the purple armor ancient god body. When it was unleashed, its combat strength was terrifying. How dare you break the rules with your strength? Die! Die! The person roared, and his attacks became more violent. The golden brick in his hand floated up and down. If they were outside, he could blow up a planet. Looks like I have to borrow Chochio's power, Lu Ming thought. Then, the bracelet on his wrist that was transformed by Chochio shot out lightning through the overbearing god spear. Boom! You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.